Ahoy, and welcome. This is Admiral. With the new update, the Italians have gotten a bit of a technological revamp and reshuffling. First off, the effect of the now obsolete Pavise technology has been given for free as a civilization bonus, which makes sense, as my team of scientists was able to identify that the Genoese crossbowman has long been stealthily employing this device regardless of whether you research the technology. So it's nice that they've learned to stop charging other archers and condottieri for the privilege of using it. Next up, their situational Imperial Age tech, Silk Road, has been discounted and moved to Castle Age. Replacing it as the Imperial Age unique technology is a new technology called Pyrotechnia, corresponding to the obsolete English word Pyrotechnia, or the more modern Pyrotechnics, and costing 650 food and 500 gold. The AoE2 wiki suggests that this name may be based on an Italian book on mining and metallurgy, which does have some relevance to weapons manufacture, although I believe the name is a more direct reference to the evolution of that term to refer explicitly to the science of making gunpowder weapons and fireworks, which was a specialty of the Italian states and reflected in one of their other bonuses. Pirotechnia is also the name of another book about recreational fireworks for civilians, notably including instructions for how to make a fire-breathing dragon.
Dragon? Nonsense, there's been a dragon in these parts for thousands of years!
However, that book was written after the medieval period, and by an Englishman. Either way, the technology, along with the new rocket carts and grenadiers, adds to the explosive theme of the new patch. As an AoE2 technology, Pyrotechnia has two effects, which we're going to consider in isolation before combining them as the technology does. The first is improved accuracy for hand cannoneers, and the second is pass-through damage. The accuracy improvement is from 75% to 90%, meaning they now should only miss a static target at maximum range 1 in 10 times instead of 1 in 4. But unlike the Portuguese technology Arquebus, this doesn't help them hit moving targets. Even so, in a typical situation where you're facing off against enemy ranged units that aren't moving around that much, or against melee units charging you, this is pretty helpful in reducing stray shots and the lost or partial damage of a miss. In a match of 60 generic hand cannoneers versus 60 hand cannoneers with only the improved accuracy, the more accurate team won 5 out of 5 tests with an average of about 17% of their hit points left. So the accuracy is a nice little boost, but nothing game-breaking. And it makes them far more accurate than elite Janissaries, which oddly only have 65% accuracy, less than that of a generic hand cannoneer. So that's an obvious and historically justifiable method of improving elite Janissaries if needed. Next, let's take a look at the pass-through damage, which might sound very strong, although it is only 15% damage, and not 50% as with Scorpion bolts. The damage dealt to a non-infantry unit is 15% of the difference between the hand cannoneer's base pierce attack of 17 and the target's pierce armor, or about 2.5 damage even if the target has 0 pierce armor. For non-infantry units with 8 pierce armor, like fully upgraded elite skirmishers, elite war wagons, or heavy scorpions, this is about 1 1/3 damage per pass-through hit. So enemies with high hit points and or pierce armor aren't going to be too worried about these scorpion bullets, although of course the damage does add up with the large mass of hand cannoneers. Against infantry units, it's the same calculation with an added 1.5 damage, as 15% of the infantry bonus damage component of 10. In most cases, for a straight shot, the pass-through damage extends to 2 tiles behind the targeted unit. You can technically hit up to 9 tiles worth of enemies by targeting a unit at your maximum range of 7, although if your enemies are politely standing in line for your target practice, you're going to win with or without this ability. And there isn't much of a practical application for this bit of trivia. Theoretically, there could be some advantage to aiming for the middle of a mass of enemies, but I think most or all of this would be negated by the overkill and additional losses you would take by not targeting the melee units dealing damage to your hand cannoneers. But let's see what the pass-through damage looks like in practice. For this next test, I've given the green hand cannoneers pass-through damage, but not the improved accuracy. Here we see a very decisive victory for the pass-through team, blasting the generic hand cannoneers away with an average of 46% of their own hit points remaining. Putting both the pass-through and the accuracy improvement together, the pyrotechnically gifted green team wins with about 49% of their HP left. So while the improved marksmanship still leaves its mark in the statistics, it's clear that the pass-through damage is doing most of the heavy lifting here. So far, the technology is looking pretty impressive, and we haven't even accounted for the Italian hand cannoneers being cheaper. Rebalancing the fight to accommodate for the Italian discount, the Italian team blows away the competition with an average of 62.5% of their hit points remaining. They even decisively crush equal resources worth of hand cannoneers from other civilizations with powerful bonuses or technologies, including Burgundians with extra attack, faster firing Spanish, and Hindustanis with greater range and armor. Although of course the Spanish and Burgundian bonuses and the Hindustani armor are free bonuses versus the 1150 resources required of Pyrotechnia, and this comparison undersells the value of the Hindustani range from their unique technology, which your hand cannoneers can use to attack from a safer distance with the support of frontline units. But I think it's safe to say that the Italians' new technology is fire. It makes them the clear winners in terms of overall firepower, which is unusual considering this is rarely the case for units that have a discount, although the developers also went in a similar direction with the discounted but superior gunpowder units for the Portuguese. Now obviously contests against enemy hand cannoneers aren't the only relevant performance metric for hand cannoneers, as Italians have condottieri specifically for that purpose, but their hand cannoneers do hold up very well against infantry, and can even counter generic elite skirmishers cost-effectively, if you're not worried about losing gold to a trash unit. Although elite skirmishers are still a reasonable counter option when gold is at a premium. Heavy cavalry and elephants are still viable counters, and of course even these impressive Italian hand cannoneers will still get smushed by siege onagers, rocked by rocket carts, and skewered by scorpions. So I don't know that they're overpowered in the context of proper counters, and it does remain to be seen how formidable the Italian late game will become with this new weapon in their arsenal. Overall, it looks like the technology makes Italian hand cannoneers extremely powerful in situations where they were already good, and somewhat better in cases where they were weak. So the technology is definitely worth grabbing if you're investing heavily into hand cannoneers, and it could really power up the Italians' late game once the advantages bought by their age and technology discounts have subsided. So those are my thoughts on the Italians' new technology, Pirotechnia, but what do you think? Does it seem like a bit much, or is it a much-needed power-up for the Italian late game? I look forward to hearing your thoughts. That's all for today, and thanks for watching. This has been me previewing the powerful, punch-packing, plate-piercing pass-through of Pyrotechnia. Till next time.